will say that our business is stronger than it has ever been.
The success of growth and where I see companies growing consistently really is your people.
I mean, the story is not, does it make power? Because they all make power. The story is, what does it power?
This is what solar installers need to know with your host, Hervé Billier and Joe Marhamati.
Hi there, it's Hervé and Joe with what solar installers need to know, where we interview solar CEOs and experts on how they run their business on the solar coaster. We ask their private revenue numbers, we give actionable advice, and learn about trade secrets so you can run and grow your solar business. Joe and I built a solar company from 0 to 12 million in sales and got successfully acquired. If you'd like to do the same or do better, go to sungrow.com/blog to get actionable behind-the-scenes lessons on running and growing your solar business. And now, without further ado, let's jump right into the next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What Solar Installers Need to Know. My guest today has founded 3 solar companies. He started Astrum Solar, sold it to Direct Energy, congratulations. He co-founded Sunlight Financial, took it public via SPAC, and now he's running Sunstone Credit, a commercial solar loan platform that has crossed $1 billion in loan applications. Again, congrats. Works with 500 plus installer partners across 30 states. And in full circle move, Sunstone Credit is now also co-owner of Sunlight Financial, which he helped secure out of a bankruptcy in 2023. Josh Goldberg, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to talking about all things solar.
All things solar. Yeah, maybe that would be another name of our podcast. A few days ago, somebody's like, so what's the podcast? You basically ask all the solar celebrities to talk to you. It's like, yeah, maybe should make that another podcast title.
All of the solar celebrities. It's a very small pond.
But it's growing. I mean, it's growing definitely. So
growing some quarters, shrinking others,
That's a painful comment, but yes. Well, I'm in the DMV area, right outside of Washington, D.C. And so I've known about Astrum Solar. And so you founded 3 solar companies. What made you keep coming back? And what did each one of those items teach you that we wouldn't have learned any other way?
Really bad judgment. Well, I guess maybe just sort of like the arc of the 3 companies. So one of my good friends growing up, Vadim Polakov, we went to Hebrew school together, we went to high school together, wrestling team, lacrosse, all this other stuff. He had sold a prior business and in 2007 said, hey, Josh, I think residential solar, I was a corporate lawyer at a law firm doing M&A work. Didn't know a kilowatt hour from a solar panel. If you asked me what an inverter was, I would be like a transformer character. And I said, hey, I think residential solar is going to be big. I was sort of looking to do something more entrepreneurial. He said, I have an idea. And I did a little research and I said, hey, I think residential solar will be big too. Let's do Astrum Solar. And there was 3 founders, Ben Davis, Vadim Polakov, and myself. And really the theory was we got started on the East Coast in 2008. At the time, Solar City, company called Sungevity, which is long since dead a couple times, Sunrun going in California. There wasn't much going on the East Coast. And we said, hey, there's an opportunity to build a professional solar installer that actually looks like a brand to the customer, that delivers a good customer experience, that isn't like a science project. A lot of the folks in the business at the time were like true believers. They wanted everything to be like a little engineering project, which is great as a hobby, but you can't build a business that way. And so that was the origin of Astrum. My parents were our first customer. The system was free. My mom, I'm Jewish, so my mom was very happy that I was a lawyer. When I told her what I was doing, she said, so you went to law school to become a door-to-door salesperson? And I didn't actually sell door-to-door, but she was pretty spot on. So I was like, hey, you kind of nailed it. And they got a free system. It was the hardest sale of my life. And when it actually turned on, they're like, oh, surprise, it actually works. Who would have thought, right? And so, Astrum was a nice success. Residential solar was very different 2008 to 2014 than it is today. We had a nice exit to Direct Energy. A couple of things along the way that I learned was, financing was really key to the customer. So we started selling cash deals. Everybody did. And then Solar City came to the East Coast in 2000, maybe late 10 or 11. I don't remember exactly. And they had this lease, right? And we were aware of it. Okay, well, they have a lease. Like we need to have one too. And I sort of said, hey, it doesn't really make sense for us to also be a leasing company. Like one of the things I've learned in entrepreneurship, it's very hard to be good at one thing, let alone 3 or 5 or 10 things. And so if you're a solar installation business, you got to generate leads, you got to hire salespeople, you got to have installers, electricians, designers, a warehouse, a lot of things to be good at. To then also be a specialty finance company, kind of crazy, right? But that's what Solar City and Sungevity and others, some of them were doing. And so our competitive response was, hey, let's partner with Constellation Energy. We got them to invest in the company. And we originated Astrum Solar leases, but sold them all to Constellation. Mm-hmm. But, I actually spent 2 years selling solar in the home. And what I concluded, and it sort of still colors my opinion today, is that third-party ownership, lease PPA, I think is a pretty stupid way for a homeowner to go solar. It was stupid then, and I think it's stupid now, even though it's tax advantaged. Think about it. At the end of the day,
You say that. I want to go deeper
yeah,
than
so
what you said.
you own your house, right?
Yes.
You go solar to save money and get away from the utility. If you lease a system, you've just created a second utility on your roof, right? Now, what it solved initially was the upfront capital cost is high, right? And so the average American can't afford $40,000 to pay cash to save over time, right? So yes, matching payments with expenses makes a lot of sense. But what I saw, and we were selling leases, but it wasn't really what the customer wanted. It made a lot of sense for the finance company. And I think in solar in general, whether it's commercial or consumer, there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense for the finance company that don't make a lot of sense for the end user. Like we have drastically overcomplicated this industry in ways that I think hurt us all the time. And so in 2013, I was 2012, 2013, I was introduced to a guy named Wilson Chang, who was at Hudson Renewable Energy, a private equity firm, and they had some infrastructure capital. And I convinced them to do solar loans for Astrum's customers. So rather than just offering a lease or a cash deal, we now offered a lease, a 20-year loan, and a cash deal.
Mm-hmm.
And almost instantly, all the lease customers moved to loan because they wanted to own the system. They own their house, right? But they needed financing. And so that program worked really well. If you fast forward like 6 months, we sold Astrum Solar to Direct Energy. You could do a whole different podcast on Direct Energy, but they paid for this house, so thank you. And I did not have much desire to stick around for a variety of reasons. And so I went to the folks at Hudson and said, hey, like, I've seen how this movie plays out, right? Like, we piloted this loan product. It was just them to us, took off. Why don't we build a business that does this for every other solar company? And that was the origin of Sunlight Financial. We sort of spun it out. I joined, we got the business going. Strom was our first customer. Yay. Direct Energy. Went to some of my friends who I really respect. Matt Rasmussen of Ion Solar. I don't know if you've had him on your show at all. Fantastic operator, the best in the business. A bunch of other folks, onboarded them as partners. And they went through that same experiment that I did of, hey, we were doing lease and cash. Let's throw a loan in there, right? And I think from 2014 through just last year, through the IRA, loans dominated the market, right? It was very clear that all else equal, ceteris paribus, the customer preferred to own the system. The loan was a better option for them. Now, the IRA and the Make America adders and those things, they started distorting the economics. And then today, there is no tax credit for purchase. There is one for a lease. So I get why people do leases, but it's not a better product for the customer. So that was sort of the origin of Sunlight. I was there for a few years. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I had disagreements with some of the investors at the business about its direction. I ultimately left in 2017. The company did fine without me, and went public in a SPAC deal in 2021. So Sunstone. So I was sort of out of solar for a little while. I had some former colleagues of mine who started a company called Lumina Solar in the Mid-Atlantic. They used to work at Astrum, a little minor involvement there, nothing day to day.
I didn't know that link. All right.
Yeah. A big thing of mine is encouraging entrepreneurship. So I love when people who used to work for me start their own business, and hopefully they'll be a lot more successful than I was. So that's really cool. And I've helped people here and there, but I was I love complaining. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I complain all the time, and I like solving my own complaints. And so if you think about Sunlight, it was, hey, I have a solar business. We're selling TPO. It's better than nothing, but it's not the best option. How can we get a better product? Loan, start Sunlight, right? And so, one thing when I was at Astrum was commercial solar. So when we got started, my partner Vadim, he's like, laser focus is a big thing of his. Batteries, no thank you. Too complicated back then, right? Like he wouldn't even, there was no price at which if Muhammad, Jesus, and God, Abraham came down and said, I want a battery in Mount Olympus, he would have said, no thank you. Like, no interest, right? And commercial solar was that way at first. We did residential. About 3 or 4 years in, and we sort of figured out residential. It was still great. We kept getting inquiries from our residential customers. Hey, you installed on my house. You guys did a fantastic job. And you think about who owns commercial property. It's all owned by homeowners. They have 2 lives, right? They are a dentist and a homeowner. They are the CFO of a public company and a homeowner, right? And we would get all these requests and we say, you know what? Time to build a commercial division, right? So around late 2012, 2013, we built the commercial division. But one thing that sort of always vexed us a little bit in commercial is if like Walmart wanted to go solar, there's a whole world of developers out there who own an asset and sell them power, right?
Yeah.
If your locally owned grocery center wants to go solar, there's just no finance. And so many times we would talk to a commercial property owner and they'd say, hey, like, can I go solar? And we said, absolutely. We'd love to help you. Is it a good deal? Absolutely. It's an even better deal than residential solar because the system prices are maybe even cheaper. Power rates for most commercial are about the same as residential. Tax credit's the same. Oh, by the way, this magical thing called depreciation exists, which is a homeowner you can't use, right? And they'd be like, well, what's the catch? And the catch was always like, whether it's $100,000 or $3 million, I don't have financing for you. So you have to either pay cash, which most businesses don't want to do. If you look at equipment broadly, businesses finance about 90% of their equipment. From forklifts to solar, like they don't pay cash for software. So asking them to do it is very unnatural. And if you have to go to your local bank, they're going to offer you a really crappy product and it's going to take a really long time to get, right?
It's interesting that you say that because when I was selling solar commercial, I tried to come up with like, a developer can own it or some other things. And the answer was like, I had so many times the same answer, and the business entity is like, we already have our own ways to access capital.
Some of them do. Some of them don't.
My problem was that as soon as you go to your local bank, you're already a client, then explain solar. Well, they don't know solar, so that's where things go to die.
Yeah,
but then,
or exactly. Or the CFO thinks, oh, I got my bank, and they go to first of all, it takes them a while to do it. And then they go to the bank and the bank offers them a 5-year loan. Well, then you're upside down for 5 years. And even if the long-term payback is good, no business owner is going to be like, yes, let me approve this deal where for 5 years I'm hemorrhaging money so that in year 7 I make money. It's an insane business proposition, right? And so I think if you think about like solar broadly, I put it into 4 buckets. Residential has grown because of financing, right? Utility scale, all financed. In the middle, I put commercial and mosh, and I put 2 buckets. One is like the Fortune 500, right? They don't usually want to own the asset, third party owned, and that's grown. And then I put the everything else commercial. And that part of the market has been like a cash business, really. And it's never kept up with the growth of the other 3. And so the question is, this was a problem for me in 2012, it was a problem in 2015, and I'm sitting at home during COVID thinking about it, and it was still a problem. And so like, why? And it wasn't a supplier demand problem, right? There's plenty of people that want to sell into the space and have tried, but it makes sense for the business owner. So what was the friction? It was my conclusion that the friction was the lack of financing. And so if I pivot from my Astrum Solar to my Sunstone Credit,
I said,
it was our belief that this middle market of commercial, that the vast majority of property out there that's not investment rated, that isn't publicly traded property, those folks want to own their own solar system. Like they own the property, they have their own tax liability. They don't want somebody else on their roof, right? But there's no financing for them. And so we said, hey, if we could build a business at Sunstone that looks at a high level like some of the resi finance companies. So on the one end, we partner with capital markets and providers to build products. We don't sell solar. We go to market through contractors. We have about 1,100 partners today in 50 states now who offer our financing to business borrowers. And for us, business is anything non-consumer. It could be an HOA, it could be a nonprofit, it could be retail, manufacturing, industrial, storage. Don't care. So,
you mentioned churches here, religious buildings. Is that also part?
If they, we underwrite them if they qualify. Yes, we do plenty of them. If their credit is good, we'll take anyone whose credit is good. And we do financing from 5 to 20 years. And the long term of our financing makes it you're able to save money on day one. We're very fast and efficient. We don't take forever to underwrite deals, and we've been growing pretty nicely for the last few years. And so I keep getting sort of like dragged back to solar. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with it, like most people have with the sort of the industries they serve. And so now I'm solving that problem of, I think this market is a really interesting one. It never had the right tools to grow in. And I think, we're at Sunstone, we're helping kind of build that market. And that's what we do today. So we finance solar, we finance storage, and we'll do solar plus storage. We launched a standalone storage loan in Q4 of last year. So we'll just finance storage. And we'll also finance a new roof in conjunction with solar. And it hasn't been announced yet, but I'll say it here. As of June 1st, we're launching what we call our flex loan, where we'll finance non-solar things. So you need HVAC, commercial HVAC, you need a chilling tower, you want to do a standalone roof, you want to put in a large generator, we'll finance all of that for you. We want to finance anything energy related that touches a commercial property, we want to finance. And so we're just starting pilots in that soon. We'll probably do a press release in a few months, but that product is going out June 1st.
Congrats. When you say energy related, where's the hard stop? For example, I'm a manufacturer. I have forklifts that are electric and I can charge them like financing those forklifts?
So for now, we won't do like mobile equipment. So it
Okay.
has to be like part of the property, but we'll do EV charging. So if you want to put EV charging into your facility, we'll do that. At some point in time, we'll continue to do more stuff. But for now, it needs to be a physical improvement to the property that is sort of equipment based. Again, generators, cogen, roof, chilling towers, EV charging, probably other things that we would do as well.
And again, the key is to have it long time financed over like 20 years, you said?
We won't go 20 for solar. We do 20 years. We won't do solar for HVAC because the unit doesn't last 20 years. But we want to have as long as reasonably possible, given the estimated performance of the asset, so that it smooths it out for the borrower.
Okay.
Businesses in general don't like big lumpy payments.
I'd like to have two questions about Sunstone specifically. If you
Sure.
go back in the early days, you said you thought about doing COVID. How exactly in the very early days, you go from an idea, maybe you talk to your wife about it, and your wife maybe said like, okay, one more idea, there we go again, if you're anything like me. And then what are the first people that you called or kind of got really started? Now you already had like experience in a previous financial company, but how do you get started with something like that?
It's a great question because I think I have a lot of ideas and many of them I don't. Well, a lot of them get started at some level and then die in process, right? So I have a picture of it somewhere. There's a whiteboard right over there. And I just started sort of drawing out on the whiteboard, like, here's the opportunity, here's, I think, the problems, here's what we'd have to solve to make it work. And so a great example is like, there's a lot of good ideas that someone might have, but they're not the right person to do. Like, I think mining an asteroid would be a great idea. I have no expertise at all in that. So like how am I going to solve that problem, right? And so it's like, hey, could I actually, the things that I would need to do to get going, building a channel of installers, getting a bank to provide like all these things, like could I realistically do those things, right? That's how I think about it first. And so I called, I mentioned Wilson Chang at Sunlight. So he's sort of like my partner in a lot of these different businesses.
Crime.
Partner in crime, yes. I called him up and said, hey, here's an idea, like beat it up. And, he beat it up and said, oh, this is kind of interesting. And so I just talked to a few more people that were in solar. Hey, like, here's my idea, like beat it up. And a lot of people said, hey, like, we've been trying to target this sector for a long time. Here's why we haven't been able to do it. And so I sort of added things to my list of like things you'd have to be able to do, like underwrite these deals quickly, right? For example. And I looked at it and said, hey, like, I think that we could do this. I would say the biggest like blocker to get going in a financing business like this is you can't raise equity to make loans. So like if you have a good idea, you can go raise some equity to do something for like operating expenses. But if, to actually write a loan, $1 million loan as a 20-year payback, like that's very hard to do with it. You can't really do it with equity. And so you need to get a financing source that tends to usually be more risk averse to actually be like, hey, Josh, like what you're doing actually makes sense. And I'm actually willing to give you capital to do it, right? Like debt capital, not equity capital. And so I've had a good relationship with Cross River Bank for a very long time, going back to Sunlight. And I came to them and said, hey, here's something that I've been working on. I got Wilson involved. Like, here's why we think it will work. And this is late 20, early 21. Would you be willing to try it? And, they said, look, like we're not experts in this space, but we've worked with you at Sunlight and saw how that worked out. So yeah, at a reasonable level, like we'll take a flyer, right? Or not on you as an operator, not necessarily our idea. And, and that was how it got started. And so we got a term sheet from them for financing. And I said, okay, like the hardest thing on my list of things I have to do that I have no control over. Check, right? So now let's build a team. Let's hire someone who actually knows commercial underwriting. Let's find a CTO. We have an amazing CTO who's built this since the beginning. Let's get a CTO on board who can build us the technology. Let me bring on my co-founder, Duncan Hinkle, who was with me at Astrum and at Sunlight to build the channel. Let's sort of build the team, right? Off to the races. And so here we are almost 5 years later, and we'll do.
You build a lot of the infrastructure before you got a first deal?
Yeah,
you
it's
didn't
actually,
go from installers you knew, like, hey, like give me a few deals, demo deals to kind of get through and figure out the pipeline and build everything around it.
It's actually very un-Josh-like, right? So like in solar, at Astrum, we sold solar before we had any idea how to install. But like, we'll figure that out later, right? And we did. Maybe it wasn't the best idea at the time. But when you're dealing with banks, right, they're heavily regulated. And so this, like, I joke, like, move fast and break things is a really good idea, but like you can't break a regulated entity's things. They don't appreciate that. And so we had to spend the first like 8 months of the business before we could even offer a loan, getting all of our compliance policies set up, and getting our technology set up so that, we could comply with like KYC and anti-money laundering laws. And the joke was like, keep Josh out of an orange jumpsuit, right? So it's, like you have to be a little bit more careful when you're sort of dealing with a regulated entity, because like at the end of the day, we were responsible for all the banking laws that our bank partner is responsible for as well. And so I think we got started in like February, March of 21, and we didn't underwrite and approve our first loan until later that calendar year. Now, during that process, we were talking to installers and saying, hey, we're going to be coming to market. What we're doing, went to folks like Lumina Solar, where I knew the folks, and went to people that I knew very well and said, hey, like, you might have tried to target this segment before. So everyone has, you failed. Here's why you should charge up that hill one more time, please, right? And do it with us, and we'll be ready to launch in X number of months.
During that period where you didn't have like deploy of capital, you had to finance your own business. That is where you did sell some equity or got partners involved?
So we did a friends and family round, largely founder capital at first, because until we actually closed that bank deal, I thought it was pretty risky. And so I didn't want to like lose someone else's money. Once we closed that deal, like fall of 21, we actually did like a traditional seed round that had external investors come in. But that first like $1 million+ we just sort of funded ourselves. Because look, there was a chance in which we worked on it, and they just said, hey, like we can't get there. And like we had no plan B. I mean, plan B would have been trying to find another bank, but like there was no like, oh, if this doesn't work, we'll just do that.
That's a problem with family and friends money. Maybe easier to get, but the strings attached when things go wrong are pretty heavy.
I mean, I actually have raised a lot of money, and I absolutely hate doing it. I think when you go to friends and family, if you're very careful, you go to people who, I don't want to say like they won't care if you lose the money, but like they have enough money such that like it doesn't affect their life. I've never taken money from my parents, for example. I don't want their money. Like, so yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned also underwriting a commercial loan, doing it quickly. I mean, those two things are very like I've never seen that happen quickly. So how did you figure that
Got for
out?
loan from us.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
what the reasoning or the logic behind being able to do it quickly?
So the reason why is you don't need solar. Solar is not a problem solution product. Not like if you're a homeowner or a business and your HVAC unit's broken, you need to replace it immediately. And so if you have to go through a lot of hoops at a bank to do it, maybe you'll do it because you just need it, right?
Yeah.
If you're selling to a business or even in the home,
Mhm.
and the financing is complicated, what's a homeowner? Oh, you know what? I'll get to it next week. And what is that code for? It's code for I'll never get to it, right? Because it just never rises. We all have to-do lists, and there's always things that I've been trying to get to next week for 5 years, right? And it just never really gets up to the top of that list, right? And so I think that's where a lot of deals went south. Oh, this is great. I'll go to my bank. And then the CFO gets busy, or the owner gets busy, or they go to the bank and the bank's like, here's 8,000 questions for you. And they're like, my God, right? Like, and they're like, I don't need that. I don't have time for it, right? Or something happens in their business. These things happen. And so we said, like, you got to strike while the iron's hot, right? In order to do that, we can't have like, back then we didn't have like instant approvals for large deals, but it has to be efficient. And it just has to be quick. Because like when the CFO meets a solar company, he's thinking about solar. Maybe he is for the next few days.
Mm-hmm.
I can get him the application, and I can review the materials. And I can ask my questions in that window and get him a decision he's still focused on. At some point, you kind of lose your time. And so we said, hey, we need to be really efficient. Commercial underwriting is a lot more complex than consumer. And so how do you be fast and efficient? Initially, you just do it manually. It's like, I don't know if you've seen Ben-Hur with like ramming speed, where the people in the galleys are just rolling really fast, right? That's what you have to do. But then over time, you say, hey, how can we automate these pieces? As we learn what we want to do, how can we automate more and more of it? And so my view is I want to continually increase my rigor, but at the same time, decrease my time to decision, which to your point are like usually like opposing forces. And so we invest a lot in AI driven automation. We get a lot of data from different places. We now have lots of proprietary data about what we do. And our goal is to be as fast as possible. We have pretty much automated underwriting for smaller deals. And that's something we really want to reduce friction in the process. So I would hope that our partners say, hey, Sunstone, you helped me close this deal because you are fast. Like we only win when everyone in our ecosystem wins, right? So we only make money when one of our contractors has sold a deal, one of our borrowers has had a system installed and is happy. That's when we get paid. And so our whole existence is to make that process faster.
I assume the commercial underwriting, I mean, every time we apply for loans or lines of credits, I mean, the amount of questions you receive as a business is massive. You have to show your P&L for the last 2 years and this and that. And so I assume, I'm not making an assumption here that your team, the ones rowing really hard in the basement, at first they just looked at, oh wait, this business owns their own building and it's valued at $500,000. We just need like a small loan for solar of $50,000 or $100,000 more than the equity in the building, like automatically approved. What's the stuff there?
That is part of the process. Yes, how much equity is in the properties, right? So like if you, in an extreme, if you have a $10 million property with no debt, I don't need to do very much work to give you $500,000, right? Because even in a downside scenario, there's a lot of equity there. And so we've tried to think about like, there are a lot of banks that are good at underwriting. They're just slow. And so we figured out, hey, how can we do some of the things that they do, but how can we do them much faster? How can we take a tax return and auto read it? Now, as opposed to a human being reading lease documents and agents doing it, right? How can we just make this process not reduce rigor, but just increase speed? And again, like if you look at our data, like every year we get a little bit better. We keep getting more and more. There's no silver bullet here. It's not like, oh my God, in 24 we did this. It's like a very complex watch. All these little pieces, we just make each movement always a little bit faster. And any individual change you don't really notice. Then you look back after 6 months, like, man, like we've run a lot faster. Why? Oh, like these 38 different things, right? And that's what we're sort of constantly trying to do, is to remove pieces and make pieces more efficient.
Now, you work with a lot of different installers. You first went to the ones and then spread the word. Do you see a trend about like the installers that don't just come back with you with like one deal, let's try to sell one, but like the ones that continuously come to you, I guess your best clients for you too. Do you see a trend what they do well that you want other installers to like, why don't you do this?
It's a good point. So I think this industry segment grew up cash, right? And so I think there's a whole segment of people out there who are like, oh, like cash is great. I've been selling cash for 5 years. Why do I want to introduce finance? And the same thing in residential solar in 2010, right? And I think those people they just missed the boat. Like the cash market for stuff is this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sell cash, sure. The rest of the market is this. And if you don't offer financing in every deal, you don't know why you don't close deals. A lot of times people just don't buy, and they don't tell you, I didn't feel like paying for it. They just don't decide. And at that point, 90% of commercial equipment is financed. Like solar is not special. It's not like, oh, and just for solar, everybody wants to pay cash. And so I think the businesses that are good, they offer financing in every deal. Look, and if a buyer wants to pay cash, fine, great. But offer financing in every deal. Let the buyer decide. If you only offer financing when someone says, hey, I can't afford this, well, it oftentimes is that the credit of that person isn't very good. There's like a joke in credit, like you don't lend to people who need your money, right?
Of course.
And so if you just offer it to like save the deal, kind of like Resi back in the day, if you don't offer only when someone says, hey, I can't afford it, well, they're probably going to get declined for financing too. And so I think the more forward-thinking businesses say, hey, I'm not selling a solar system, I'm selling savings. In order to sell savings, I need to actually provide the cash to pay for it. And so I think like, especially today in 2026, funky economy, gas prices through the roof, business confidence down, you don't want a business to be thinking, how am I paying for this capital expenditure?
Mm-hmm.
Am I buying solar or am I investing in my core business? You will always lose. But if you come to the table with financing, whether it's me or somebody else, it's not your business or solar. Hey, I want to sell you solar. I want to sell you savings. And by the way, I'm going to give you the financing you need to buy. Package up in a nice bow. To me, it's all about reducing friction for folks. People are just so busy. They don't want to go to the bank and answer 800 questions. Just make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, it's inertia. It's one of the greatest forces in nature, I think.
It hits me all the time. There's so many things I don't do because just one more thing to do is more work, right? But if someone makes it easy for me, I get it done.
Well, talking about inertia, like a lot of solar residential installers are trying to do commercial, which is kind of a push into diversification in HVAC and a lot of different stuff, including commercial. So if an installer has done like 0 commercial so far, what would they have to do for you to be a customer in 90 days or something?
To be honest, like we only offer loans to approved installers. So we'll be pretty skeptical of a Resi guy who hasn't done commercial before, especially if their first deal is a large one. Right now, if their first deal is a 50 kilowatt dentist office that looks like a residential, that's a great place to start, right? I think that like some of the engineering work is different. Some of it's more complicated. You have to price it more carefully. If you're doing residential and you do 10 deals a day and one deal you price terribly and one deal you made extra margin, it kind of evens out in the wash. If you're doing $2 million projects and you mess up your pricing on a deal, like it's a big problem, right? And so it's a different system and process. I actually think that the more sophisticated residential folks should get into commercial, because if you think about who owns most commercial property? It's owned locally. Who owns it? Your solar customers, right? So if you can figure out that cross sale, that's really powerful. But I think like what we've seen best in class is residential, commercial business, different divisions, they share information. So like the crews are often different. The engineering's different. The procurement's different. Residential is a constant stream of same things, right? Commercial is bigger project, different inverter, different wiring. Maybe you need like a lift to get to the roof. Like it's just a little bit different process. But we actually have a series going on right now with I can't remember who's in it. Like I think Enphase and REC and Install and some other folks aimed at how to help the residential installer and get into small commercial. But I would say like start small. The sales cycles are you're not gonna one call close $1 million deals. It doesn't exist. It's just a little bit different process. So know that. And I think also like don't have back at Astrum, every residential salesperson wanted to get into commercial because they see the dollar, like you add a zero, right?
Yeah, and then you tell them how long it took for that deal, and then
he goes, we had this great guy, Mark Vanthey. Love Mark, and he did it, and he ultimately moved into commercial sales. I'd be like, Mark, when's that deal closing? Next week. Next week. When's that deal closing? Next week, right? These deals they just take forever, and so you really can't kind of do both, right? Residential is all about getting to the appointment, process, closing then or the night of. Commercial is all about building leads. How do you get leads, right? They're harder. You got to network in your community. How do you have a meeting? Can you actually talk to a CFO? Can you sit with a prospect for 6, 9, 12, 24 months, building that pipeline of deals? And it also takes a while. So I think like in Resi, you can get started and go, right? You have to be willing to commit to, I'm building a commercial business. I know I'm not going to sell very much for a while. If you're 3 months in, you're like, I haven't sold anything, I'm shutting it down. Well, like, don't ever start.
Don't start. Yeah, it's very, very different timeline. There is one really good thing about selling commercials, like you can sell during your business hours because those people make business decisions and that's their job.
Yeah, you're not going to their business at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, right? They're during business hours. They're usually pretty responsive. They're usually pretty direct. If you do it right, they can be less competitive because I think if you generate a unique lead source. Like we've seen people who figure out, hey, like I'm an expert in car dealerships, and they go deep into car dealerships, or I'm an expert in hotels, or whatever. Like they figure out their area of expertise, and they go deep. And actually, one thing that I think like referral networks work in commercial just as well as they do in residential. Like in residential, when I sold, you get one home in like a Howard County, Maryland subdivision. Then you get 3. It grows. Same thing in commercial, right? If you do it right.
True, but I don't think I would say it's more competitive. I mean, the amount of times I received a call like, hey, I already got a quote from Lumina and from, what's the company in DC?
Solar Solutions or Green Brilliance or
the New Columbia Solar. And it's like, okay, I already have 2 quotes. I need a third one. Like, all right. I mean, that happened a lot. And so,
so like those deals, I'd be like, no, thank you. Go get it somewhere else. If I was doing it, I would want to build relationships with property owners where you offer a fair price and you can get more referral-based business. They're not always less competitive.
Yeah, but I mean, companies have rules in place. If you make a purchase of a certain amount, you need 3 quotes, no matter what.
Some of the really big ones certainly do.
Yeah, I remember like banks that I tried to put solar on that I initiated the deal and then they went to New Columbia Solar. And then after months of negotiation, I remember I lost that one. But yeah, it's so I wouldn't say necessarily, well, there's a few that we generated. You're right. Like it's really relationship based. NPR, for example, they heard us on NPR. And because we did advertising on NPR, we were the one. We have a few of those deals that we.
Yeah. I would be less interested in responding to like RFPs than like building a relationship with a property owner who owns multiple properties or if you're a residential business, you have residential customers where you already did a good job on their house.
That's true, but RFPs are annoying, but now you can use AI to start answering all your questions. Then
everybody has the same answers, right?
We've not spoken about batteries. So you also do fund batteries. That's new in commercial.
Yeah. So we've done solar plus storage for a while. An interesting fact. So in 2022, our storage attachment rate, the number of deals that were solar plus storage was literally 0%. In 2023, it was 5%. In 2024, it was 12%. And in 2025, it was 31%.
Wow.
Now that's, there's definitely some state concentrations, California and the Northeast more than other places. But, we're seeing a fair amount of attachment rate. I think that will continue to go up. And we're starting to see some standalone storage. Like there are some markets where some of the storage incentive programs, maybe you're a building that doesn't have enough space for solar, office building, taller building, roof is funky, lots of stuff on the roof, whatever it is. But storage actually pencils, and you have a big parking lot, right? And so I think storage is a nice complement to solar. It's also, I think, a market in and of itself where it actually can increase the TAM, because there's some buildings, when you're in solar, you drive around in like a home, and shaded, no good, right? It's like a disease, right? You're up in the airport. Oh, that roof is terrible. Too many units on the roof, right? Well, you know what? Maybe they could go storage, and they don't need solar. And so I think it's early innings. I would kind of equate it to me, the storage market today is like solar in 2010, right? It's very immature. It's funky. No one really knows how it's going to play out. But I think it's going to play out in a very positive way. Just no one exactly knows all the different use cases. But I think it will be quite big. And we want to finance. And if businesses want to adopt it, fantastic. So we're very bullish on it. I think in general, one big shift that I've seen that's really new for my career, that I've been in this now since 2007, is people always went solar to make money. A homeowner, businesses were like IRR in a spreadsheet, right? Nobody was like, oh my God, I have this big problem. But now, because if you think about early adopter curves, it was like early adopters doing stuff. So now, because power prices have risen so much in the past 3 or 4 years, and it's all over the news, right? It's every election is about it. It's all over the place. Every article you read is about power prices. And so it's in the minds of every homeowner, every business owner. Power prices are a problem. And what's the solution to that problem? Solar, storage, a new HVAC unit, new windows in your house. You're actively looking at ways to reduce your bill, not just to make money. That shift in the mindset of the buyer, I think, is really profound, and I think really important, because when you're just looking to make money, your return hurdles as a homeowner or business are just higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're solving a problem, then your return hurdles are lower and your urgency level is high. So if you're a nursing home and you're like, man, last year was my worst year in a long time. Why? Utility rates went up. Nothing I did. I treated my patients. I got new residents. I did a great job. My profitability got crushed because my utility sucks. Now that's a problem. How do I solve it? Right. So I think that mindset, I think, is really interesting. And I think that to me is more important than the ITC, whether it's here or gone. How much do people actually care about doing this kind of stuff? And that's probably the most interesting thing I've seen in the past 15 years.
We have to some growth in the industry.
Yeah, I always joke, I know where solar and storage will be in 2040. And but I don't know what's in that line plot, right?
Yeah.
And look, and like any industry, there's plenty of, we were joking before the call started about residential solar. There's plenty of garbage out there and business models that are terrible for the consumer and suck, that kind of plague the industry. And eventually those will sort of sift, and they largely already have. But I think that's just the maturation of any industry. We're not even 20. I don't think there's a single PPA that's even reached its 20-year life yet, right? And this is kind of a funky phenomenon.
Yeah. Josh, thank you very much for sharing your points of view and your many years in the solar industry experience and knowledge. Very much appreciated.
If anyone listening loved my complaining, check me out on LinkedIn. I talk about TV shows, past foods. I generally complain about all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. I follow you on LinkedIn too. So go to LinkedIn on Josh Goldberg, and you'll find his profile pretty easily, and click follow.
It was an absolute pleasure joining you. Always happy to talk.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
If you'd like to do the same or do better, go to sunvoy.com/blog and get actionable behind-the-scenes lessons on running and growing your solar business.